Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. In this episode, I'll be talking with Dr. Trisha Zehrung, a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and fertility consultant. After experiencing her own fertility challenges, she realized the huge gap in fertility care and now works diligently to fill that gap and help busy couples optimize their fertility through natural and holistic solutions. And in today's episode, we're going to be discussing inflammation, which is really the silent alarm that's affecting your fertility. So welcome, Dr. Trisha. I'm super excited for our conversation today. It sounds like we have very similar backstories that is fueling our passion to help couples conceive, because I resonate with your story so much. I experienced my own challenges conceiving, and as a healthcare provider, I experienced firsthand the gap that we have as women and couples when we want to be able to optimize our fertility naturally. So super excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I feel like even as practitioners, that gap is, when we experience that gap in care and the difficulty navigating it, I knew that I needed to step into that and do something about it with my background. And I'm sure you kind of felt similar.
Absolutely. And I feel like in pharmacy school, I don't know about school for you, fertility was probably just one of those very briefly touched upon topics. And then, of course, as women growing up in this modern day and age, we're just not educated enough on our bodies and like what fertility really even is and what it means. So, yeah, super excited. We haven't touched on inflammation like specifically in an episode, and I feel like the term inflammation is thrown around so much, but I would love to have you share with the listeners, what is inflammation exactly and what does that mean?
Yeah, so inflammation itself is not typically a bad thing, right? It's actually a good thing and a normal bodily response to, a cut or an abrasion or something that happens and we get inflammation in the area, we see healing and scabbing happen. The problem with inflammation is when it changes from that acute inflammation to a chronic inflammation, where there's something going on in the body that is chronically causing a low level of inflammation at all times. And what that, at the most simplest terms, does is it puts our body in this state where it's not prioritizing procreation. So when our body is trying to constantly fight off some sort of inflammation, something going awry in our body, it is not going to prioritize procreation because that's not the most important thing. Healing is the most important thing. And so we have to then be little investigators to figure out where inflammation could be coming from. But I see inflammation being one of the causes, because it's not the cause. We have to dive deeper to figure out where it's coming from. But that's a lot of the underlying issue, is that somewhere under the surface, outside of the reproductive system, usually we see inflammation affecting fertility.
I love that you started with inflammation isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I feel like we can really create like a fear around inflammation, but remembering that that is a process that our body has to heal itself. It's really when it's that chronic inflammation that is not being correctly addressed where it can have poor outcomes, especially for fertility. So, in your practice with your patients, what would you say are the most common contributors to inflammation that you're seeing?
Yeah. The biggest one that I see across the wall, it might be a tie, but one of the biggest ones I see is underlying gut health issues. So oftentimes I'll get GI map results back, which is a comprehensive stool test that's kind of like a snapshot of your microbiome and what the bacterial balance looks like. A lot of times I see a lot of inflammatory bacteria overgrowing, which causes breakdown in the gut lining, causes things that aren't supposed to get through into the extraintestinal system. And then our body mounts that immune response, and we see it affecting wide stream of things, your skin, your brain, causing brain fog, causing obviously stomach issues sometimes as well, but all those different things as well as fertility, affecting that hormone balance. Many times tied back to the gut health issues is stress. So we see a lot of stress in our life, modern lives now, more so than what we've seen before and what our bodies were meant to handle. And so a lot of it has to do with that. Now, it doesn't always have to be physical stress or emotional stress, but we also place stress on the body to work through toxins that are in our food and our products and all of those things that we use on a regular basis. So that puts a lot of stress on our bodies. Like I said, the food that we eat, that standard American diet is not what we were meant to consume. And so that causes a lot of inflammation in our body. That negative cycle of mindset that causes cortisol to boost, causes inflammation, the blood sugar spikes. I could go on and on and on, but all of those things often are interconnected. I'll have a lot of clients that come and have a multifold of issues, but they're really all interconnected. And I like to explain that to them because they get kind of like, well, I've got this wrong and I've got this wrong and I've got this wrong and I've got this wrong. And I'm like, if we move the needle on one, we're probably going to move the needle on all of them.
Absolutely, right. It all has a downstream effect. Once one thing is affected, other things are going to be affected. But yeah, gut health, the microbiome, those are really like hot and heavy in the social media space right now. But kind of like you connected there, it didn't necessarily just begin in our gut, right? There are so many different things that is where it actually started, the root cause of the gut health issue. So, stress, like you were saying, endocrine disruptors, just so many different things that we don't even think about. And actually, I had another guest on the podcast, Dr. Katie Lee. She's a dentist, and just speaking about our oral microbiome. And that's like where our gut actually starts. And honestly, like that wasn't anything that I ever really considered, years ago.
Yeah.
And it really is just amazing how everything is so connected. And when you do make a couple positive shifts, that so many things can change for you. So let's just say someone is coming to you, they have gut issues, maybe a few other things causing inflammation. How is that showing up as an impact for their fertility? What does that do to egg health? What does that do to our hormones and even sperm health too? We have to consider the
Can't
male
leave that out. Takes two
partner.
to tango.
Exactly. So what is that downstream effect of inflammation on our reproductive health?
Yeah, well, it really, that inflammation affects us at like a mitochondrial cellular level. And so, and as our body like even creates basic energy with ATP. And so if we can't do that because we have that low lying, that's where all the energy is going. It's not going towards fertility. We're going to see effects in egg quality. So, that can look like a little bit of an elevated FSH on some labs. That can just look like struggling to get pregnant, but it can also look like early miscarriages. Sperm quality, we know that sperm quality is dramatically decreasing. Not just count and motility, but morphology is the big one I see as well, that people are out there being told, oh yeah, it's completely normal. Well, of course, if you're going to be doing fertility treatments, because they're going to pick which sperm they're going to use. But if you're trying naturally, morphology does matter. If only 2% of your sperm are normally shaped, they're not going to probably get to where they're trying to go. And then we see motility drop down and we start to see count drop down as well, because all of that is really that inflammation from the lifestyle affecting the sperm quality. Now, the good news for egg quality and sperm quality, of course, is that research has shown us that even a shift for 3 to 6 months can make a huge impact on sperm and egg quality. And so, yes, it's not a quick fix, but it also doesn't take all that long to see those big wins and to be able to prepare your body to get pregnant quickly either. Back to women, we can see it also affect that uterine receptivity, the ability to implant if there's inflammation going on there. We know that inflammation is linked to endometriosis, and certain things we find in the gut are linked to endometriosis as well. So that can have an effect as far as overall hormone balance. If we've got inflammation, our body's not prioritizing that production either, and it can affect other things like the hypothalamus pituitary ovary connection, as well as like DHEA production and things like that. So there's a whole host of issues that inflammation causes, and I always just try to sum it up simply to my clients: inflammation and fertility are not friends.
Absolutely. Very anti-fertility.
Yes.
And going back to speaking what you were saying on it really can happen as quickly as 3 to 6 months, which in reality is not that much time. And I like to remind my clients that we're doing this work not just so you can get pregnant, but like you're gonna feel healthier and better and more vibrant, and you're gonna have more energy, and you're not gonna feel so tired and sluggish moving into this phase as you become parents. So it's really taking the time to get your body in a very pro fertility optimized state. It's going to have decades and decades of benefits for you, for your children, and it's just totally worth it. So do you have top three, maybe top five, if there's extras that you really love, tips to help combat inflammation? And obviously, depending on what is the root cause of the inflammation, it could be more specific for some people, but just general overall tips that pretty much anyone could benefit from. What would those be?
Absolutely. And I want to go back quickly to what you said about it's like generational health. It's not just about your fertility. Obviously, that's what you're focused on right now, but it's really that gift that keeps on giving for generations and generations, because it's just, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And so a lot of people don't know where to start because they're not given any direction in their traditional fertility offices about this information on how they can make these improvements. Right. My top three would be, of course, always number one is nutrition. Take a inventory of what your nutrition looks like. I would rather you focus on not restriction, but replenishing and making swaps. So I don't ever expect perfection out of anybody. I'm not perfect. Like, I eat things that are not the best things for me sometimes, but it's more of an 80-20 balance, right? If you have not achieved that balance, or you're like, I don't even know what that balance means, you're going to want to focus the majority of your foods on whole foods. Whole food is an apple is an apple. A piece of chicken is a piece of chicken. Like, it doesn't need an ingredient list because it is what it is. And if you can swap to eating clean proteins and veggies and fruits first, like those first, and then focusing on more like complex carbohydrates like sweet potatoes, maybe some brown rice, those veggies, of course, having lots of different veggies in your meals before you would have things like processed foods. So think the inside of your grocery store. If you can make that swap alone, that's the biggest needle mover you're going to have on your fertility, hands down. Maybe enough for some people, may not be quite enough, but if you haven't done that yet, that would be the biggest thing I would say to do. The second thing would be to look at your products that you're using on a daily basis. Okay. So you don't have to throw out every toxic product you have in your home. I would focus just maybe on the ones that you're using daily and make slow swaps out. Make it tangible, financially affordable. Find a coupon code. There's always a coupon code for like Branch Basics and things like that, those products that you're cleaning out. But pay attention to your deodorant, pay attention to the makeup you're using, the face wash, and probably your laundry detergent. Like, those are the biggest ones. You're putting that stuff on your body every single day. That's a good way to lower your toxin threshold. And then I think probably the third thing that I would pick for my clients would be sleep. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. I know that sounds so simple, but it's not, because a lot of us are going to bed pretty late, then we're still getting up early, and we're not really understanding how that's affecting our body. And I think I spotted an aura ring on your finger. And I also have an
Yeah.
aura ring on my finger.
HRV.
And the amount of information that I learned when I started wearing my aura ring, I already knew most of us have our deepest sleep in that early part of the night. So that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is where the most of us hit that really deep restorative sleep. If we're not going to bed until after 10 p.m., we're missing a lot of that restorative sleep. And so while we may wake up, a lot of us wake up, oh, I still kind of like feel tired, but I slept all night. Like I don't understand. But you didn't hit that deep sleep because you were going to bed too late. Things that can affect your sleep, like watching TV before bed, drinking wine or alcohol. I noticed like even having 1 to 2 glasses of wine before I went to bed, like on a weekend, really negatively affected my deep sleep. So you can learn a lot of information from wearables like this. Not that it's necessary by any means. You could literally just shift your sleep about 30 minutes earlier until you were closer to that 9:30 range falling asleep. That way you're getting that nice deep sleep. You're getting the full advantage of that and just see how much of a difference it makes. But that's when our body does its healing. And so if we're not getting enough sleep, we're not giving it that chance to truly heal either. I
Hmm.
think those would be my top three.
Yeah, those are really good and manageable. And like you said, small steps at a time, maybe making one swap at a time, just so it's not so overwhelming. And yeah, you're going to just see dramatic changes and shifts by doing those. So this question came through as you were speaking. Can you think of any heavy hitters or causes of inflammation that people may not realize? So, what I'm thinking, I remember way back when someone in my fertility community was asking about cannabis. I feel like we all know that cigarettes, smoking tobacco is not good, but then sometimes we may have the misunderstanding that, oh, cannabis is like natural, but no, cannabis is actually very, very bad for your fertility for both men and women. So
Mhm.
sometimes people don't think about things. So is there anything else that comes to mind where people may be consuming or participating in certain activities that could be causing inflammation in their body? Using our 4-step restorative fertility framework, we will 1, reveal the physical and energetic root cause. 2, we will remove the barriers to you conceiving and carrying a pregnancy to term. Number 3, we will rebalance the physical and energetic body with bio-individual strategies. And number 4, receive. You will nourish the mind, body, and spirit so you can receive baby. I have 3 one-on-one spots, and this is for the woman who is ready to claim her fertility back. She's ready to step back into her power. She is ready to do what it takes to finally get pregnant. If you want to learn more about this, find me on Instagram at @the_wellness_pharmacist. My Instagram is going to be in the show notes.
Yeah, so just coming to mind, of course, and this may not be as much of a secret. And again, I do want to say that gluten itself is not always bad, but I think that for most and a lot of the people, I find there's a breakdown in the gut lining that they are highly reacting to gluten. We know gluten in America is sprayed with glyphosates. It's just trash, honestly, here. Gluten, you're finding, that's going to be your pastas, your breads, all those processed foods anyway. But I do find a lot of people reacting to gluten. She says, I can see it in the nut, like it's plain as day. It's through in the red so high. And it doesn't mean that they're like that forever. It means they have underlying work to do. But I know that that is one that a lot of women I've seen cut gluten out for a little while and they feel so much better and their fertility starts to balance out and ovulation starts to be restored and they see a big shift. I think even though we talk about it a lot, I think just leading the American stressful lifestyle. And I know there's a lot of taboo about saying stress causes infertility, right? Because we're all stressed when we're trying to conceive and we can't, right? Like that piece is really hard to control. But it's that stress on top of all the other stress we have in our lives and being afraid to slow down and rest and allow our bodies the time they need to rest. So I think while stress is talked about a lot, I do think people underestimate like just the effect of stress. I have a lot of like night shift workers who are like really stressed because they're thrown off their circadian rhythm. And they're really surprised when they see that throw their cycle completely off. But it really has a true effect. Cannabis is a great one. That's one studied very heavily in the research along with smoking. But yeah, I think like people think that is a harmless one, and it's really not. It's very studied. Same with alcohol. Alcohol is studied. I know people want to continue to consume alcohol when they're trying to conceive, which by all means, I'm not telling you to turn your life off if that's something that you enjoy, but we do have to remember at the end of the day, alcohol is a toxin. And so it's going to affect it to some extent. And so taking a real look at like your husband and the woman's lifestyle and how much you're consuming alcohol does matter. I think there's been a lot of talk around cycle syncing and certain like workouts and stuff. I know like HIIT has been like super discouraged in the fertility community. That's not necessarily the case for all. Like PCOS shows really good statistics with HIIT. However, for women who do have like really high cortisol, sometimes it's not always the best option for them. So that can come as a surprise, I think, to some people as well. So I think just digging in though and knowing, where do you lie? What do you have going on? You'll see all these general recommendations online. Oh, this supplement is like the key to getting pregnant. A lot of people are all on myo-inositol and they're like, well, this is the key. I saw it online. Like they told me so, but you don't have PCOS, you don't have insulin resistance, like you don't really have a reason you're ovulating just fine. That's probably not going to be the magic fix for you. So I think there is so much value in just figuring out exactly what's going on with you. However, going back to some of those fertility foundations that we talked about, if you haven't done any of those yet, that's a really, really great place to start and just get the support and the guidance that you need to be able to sustain them. Because that's the big thing. We can tell you all of these things, but if you don't have the support in place to be able to sustain them, and it's going to make it a lot more challenging for you. You're going to want to give up. You're going to feel like it didn't work for you when maybe you just didn't try long enough, right? You didn't have the support you needed and the people in your corner to be able to guide you through that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those are all really good ones to look out for and just be aware of. And one that just comes to my mind is seed oils because
Uh,
they're hidden in
yeah.
everything.
They
Like,
are hidden in everything. And that's when I start to teach my clients how to read labels. They're like, it's in everything. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And it's one of those things, just like toxins, I say, don't stress the stress that you're going to cause yourself to cut every single seed oil in your entire life is not worth like the actual effect of just having a little bit in your life, right? They're like, I can't never eat out again. And I have a lot of teachers and clients, and they're just such good rule followers, but sometimes like to their own default, right? They're like, I literally can't. I'm like, no, it's gonna be okay. But really, yeah, seed oils are a big one, which I feel like are again mainstream. Well, maybe just my social media because I'm being targeted, but I hear, everything's about the seed oils and how targeted they are. And it is true, like they're causing a lot of inflammation. And I listened to a podcast not that long ago about how they're actually like made and how before they go through some of the other processes, they're like literally you would get violently ill if you even consumed a little bit of them and then they like process them more. It's insane. It's gross.
yeah, like canola oil was first made for car engines or something like that. But I feel like a cool way to look at seed oils is kind of the way with the endocrine disruptors, the kind of making healthy swaps, things that you eat often and regularly, try to find healthier options. So like if you eat salads on the regular, right, try to find a salad dressing that is maybe made with olive oil or avocado oil or make your own at home. So just things like that, because I try to be very careful for myself and my family too, but there are some things that do still have seed oils. They are hard to avoid, but trying to find healthier swaps for the things that you regularly consume. And just going back to what you were saying about stress is we all have different capacities and different You can call it like a stress bucket, toxin bucket, inflammation bucket, whatever you want. But, someone, client A could have a really, really stressful job. Maybe they drink a glass of wine every night when they come home and they're using Bath and Body Works products or something like that. And then someone else could maybe not have so much of a stressful job, but her partner smokes in the home, or, we all have just different capacities. So kind of like what you were saying is you really have to become in tune with your own situation and like what things are really going to benefit you could be very different from what could benefit me, right? People who live in the city, you're breathing a lot more polluted air than someone who's maybe living in the country. I mean, that could be debated if you live near corn or something like that, but it varies person to person. So that's where working with someone like Dr. Trisha or myself or anyone else that you feel aligned with can be so helpful, because we're going to help you figure out like, yeah, these are some of the things that are really like taking a lot of space in this inflammation bucket. Like, here are places where we can help you minimize those inflammation contributors. So I think that this conversation is really, really important because, like you hit on earlier, like the day and age that we live in, just the things that we're exposed to that we can't even see in the air, the water we drink, and then the stressors, we are dealing with things that our ancestors did not have to. So we can really help support our bodies to become more resilient in the time that we live in. So I know you have a master class and it is free for the listeners. I would love to have you share about that.
Yeah, so I have this awesome, amazing, jam-packed masterclass that I created for all of you because I think we were talking about briefly in the beginning is you didn't learn anything about your cycle. As high schoolers, we were just like whatever, and in college, probably doing all the things to our bodies that we just talked about not doing, not sleeping, all of that. But somewhere in there, we never learned actually anything about our cycle and the signs that it can give us and the clues that it can give us that maybe are a hint to why we could be struggling with infertility. Or even just if you're not struggling with fertility, it's still important to understand your cycle, especially if you're going to try to conceive. I mean, there's many women out there who just continually follow like an app that says they ovulate on day 14 and they haven't gotten pregnant, and this whole time it's because they actually missed their fertile window because they're basing it off of a generic app that it doesn't know anything about them. And so you can be in the driver's seat of that if you truly understand the intricacies of your cycle and the hormones and what is happening and the fertile signs. And so that was really the purpose behind creating this masterclass, was so that you could understand at a basic level what your cycle is, how, like, the phases of the cycle, how you progress through them, and use your cycle to compare to the norm, because we don't even know what the norm is out there. Even your OB will tell you like, oh, your cycle's like 30 days and then 40 days. Oh, yeah, it's normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. And so to get that information out to you all, I created this master class. You're going to want to have a pen and a notebook nearby, but it's really a good introduction into all of the things that you can do to be empowered in your fertility journey and how to use that to hopefully get pregnant faster.
Amazing. Yes, our cycles are our health report cards, and you can really learn a lot when you can hone in and maybe even take your BBT and just see
Yeah.
what's going on. So amazing. And if you want to share with the listeners where they can find you, learn more, and connect with you.
Yeah, I'm best found on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung, and hopefully that you can put that in the show notes so they know how to spell that crazy last name. So yeah, that's where I'm best found. I love chatting with my followers. So if you have any questions, please pop into my DMs. I'd be happy to start a conversation with you, learn more about you and your journey. I just love that people are in there and sharing with me, and that I get the blessing and opportunity to be able to walk alongside you all in this journey, because I know that it's not an easy one.
Amazing. Yeah. So go check out Dr. Trisha, and thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I know that everyone got something out of this. Someone learned at least one piece that can help support optimal fertility. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.